Expectation, expectation, expectation. I need you to say right now, say, I expect to win. I expect to have success. I expect to dream big. I expect to be a champion. One of my favorite ESPN 30 for 30s, in this one episode, it's about Jimmy V. It's about the team, the NC State, one of the all-time greatest comebacks, unfortunately for me, because I'm from Texas. I love the University of Houston. And they had one of the biggest upsets. They upset the University of Houston last second buzzer beater in the national championship. The coach goes crazy. He's running all around the court. After they won the national championship, he gave a speech and he titled his speech, Cutting Down the Nets. You cut down the nets when you experience a championship. You cut down the nets when you have success. You cut down the nets when you become a champion. And when they interviewed the players 20, 30, I don't know how long ago that was, 20, 30, 40 years later, they interviewed the athletes, they interviewed his players, and they asked them, they said, what do you remember about Jimmy V? The first thing that they talked about, they said, I remember one of the first days of practice. They said, I remember that we didn't use balls in the very first practice. We weren't shooting baskets, we weren't dribbling, we didn't do any of those drills. He said what they would do is they would practice cutting down the nets. They practice giving the speech, delivering a thank yous. They practice shouting out to their mom, shouting out to their dad, shouting out to the family members, their teammates. They practice thanking everyone on the very first practice because the athlete said, they said, we didn't know it back then, but what he was doing was he was creating a vision inside of us. That he was creating a vision inside of our hearts. He was creating a vision inside of our minds. He was creating a vision inside of our soul. He was making us expect what it was like to win. He was making us expect what it would taste like. He was making us expect what it would be like to have that victory moment and to imagine it. And so when you imagine it and you expect to win, you bring it out. And so what that team did was they called it Survive and Advance. That's what the documentary was called, because they had to win all of the games. They didn't have the best season. They had to win all of the games to close out the year in order for them to make the NCAA tournament. In order for them to make the playoffs, they had to win all of those games in order for them to get to that moment. And so what they did was they won all of those games to get into the tournament. And they win the first round, the second round, the third round. They're in the Final Four. All these crazy moments happen during the games. And then they're at that last championship. The coach goes crazy. He goes running around. But they had thought about that moment before they ever got there. They thought about that moment before they were in that situation. They thought about that moment because they had expected that they would get there someday. They had expected that they were going to have success. They were expecting that they were going to be winners. I'll never forget my coach one year in college. We did not have the most successful season my year in college. And my coach brought me in. We're sitting in his room. He's looking at me right in the eyes. And my coach tells me, what do you think we're going to do next year? What are your expectations for next year? I looked him in the eyes and said, Coach, I expect us to go undefeated. I said, Coach, I expect us to win the championship. I told him, I expect us to do our very best. And my coach, he looked at me and he said, I want you to make realistic expectations. He said, I don't want you to have goals that we're going to go undefeated when you know we're not going to go undefeated. He said, I don't want you to make goals that we're going to win a lot of games when we're not going to win a lot of games. And then became like a self-fulfilling prophecy the next year. My coach that didn't expect us to have a lot of games that were successful, well, we ended up not having those games successful. I believe that if we had it inside of our hearts, I believe that if we had it inside of our minds, I believe that we had it deep down in our soul, if we expected to win, we would have had more success. If we expected to win, we would have tried extra hard. Because when you don't expect to win and things start to go bad, you give up right away. When things mess up in your life and you don't expect things to go good, you let them happen. But when you expect to win, you show up. When you expect to win, you give more effort. When you expect to win, you go all the way to the top. You give everything you got. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to expect to win on the field. I want you to expect to win on the court. I want you to expect to win in the classroom. I want you to expect to win in your family. I want you to expect to win in everything you do. And when you expect to win, you're going to give that effort. You're going to give that full range of emotion. You're going to give everything you got. Heart, mind, and soul. You're going to give it all. Heart, mind, and soul. If you expect to win, you're going to win. Don't forget, it's game time.